From the William B. Travis Building in Austin, Texas, we're keeping Texas energy on track. Here's your host, Bryce Doobie.
Welcome to Texas Energy on Track. I am your host, Bryce Doobie, joined as always by Nick Cranock, our producer slash co-host slash... You do a lot of things at the Railroad Commission.
I'm just a slash. I just slash this, slash that. Yeah, happy to do it. Happy to be here. Back with another episode of the podcast. I love doing this. Love being in here. It's nice that we're doing this again. I know it's only been 2 weeks, but it's good to get out here.
Yeah, this has been, I think, one of the most interesting things, like we've mentioned before. Like I am new to this agency. I started here in February of 25, and I'm learning so much. And this podcast has been so informative for me personally. Just being able to talk to all of our different experts. I think I need to calculate how many like centuries of experience we've interviewed so far on this podcast, because I think we've at least crossed 100 years of experience. I think at this point, easily.
That would be interesting to know. Yeah, that's a good thing. I'll look into it. That's another slash you can add.
Well, key researcher. So
there you go. I like that.
This episode is kind of a continuation of some stuff that we've talked about before in a certain way, and then it really delves into a new interesting realm as well, because we are joined today by Miles Kirk. He is the Pipeline Safety Support Manager here at the Railroad Commission. Miles, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. I appreciate y'all having me on today.
So we've talked before with Stephanie about pipeline safety, which is one thing when we hear pipelines, but you have a very different role. Before we dive too much into that, tell us a little bit about yourself as far as how long you've been with the commission, your like educational, professional background, all of that.
Yeah, so I originally joined the commission back in 2018. I came here from academia, which kind of a wild jump. But I was faculty at Texas Tech for a few years, started working here as a compliance analyst, did that for, I guess about 3.5, 4 years. Did a brief stint at Texas DPS, came back, and I feel like I'm back home again. It's nice to be here. We specifically deal with Chapter 18, so Stephanie's group has the overarching side of pipeline safety, but we have a specific subset that deals primarily with damage prevention, excavation safety, and that general area.
So when we're talking pipelines, we've kind of gone over it before, but maybe for a refresher from either new listeners or folks who aren't sure, what sort of pipelines are regulated by the Railroad Commission? I know intrastate, not interstate, correct?
Yeah, so we have some specific jurisdictions within Chapter 18 that we look at. For example, depth is one of those things that we examine to ensure that a pipeline is jurisdictional for us when a damage does occur. There are materials that can be moved throughout those pipelines that make them non-jurisdictional or jurisdictional depending on that. But there is a fairly laundry list of items that includes our jurisdiction within the state with Chapter 18.
So just as a hypothetical for materials in pipelines that we don't cover, water pipelines.
Yeah, so that's going to be outside of our jurisdiction, similar to sewage, similar to electric lines aren't going to be something that we would enforce Chapter 18 on. That would be outside of our jurisdiction.
But all of that being said, knowing as like a homeowner in a community and things, a lot of these things do run somewhat near each other, particularly in residential and things like that, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. And that's one of the kind of hot button topics that we typically see within Chapter 18 is the importance of calling 811. 811 is going to get out and locate all of those. Even if they are outside of our jurisdiction, it doesn't really matter. That's going to be marked by that locator. So that's why we stress that you should, in fact, call 811 if you are going to be doing any type of digging or excavation within your property, anywhere you're going to be putting tools in the ground or moving earth, you need to have that one call ticket made.
That's really good to know, and it's, again, easy number to remember. What are some of the more common causes when we're talking pipeline damage here in Texas? What are you folks, excavation, is it typically things like that, or what are we looking at?
Oh, absolutely. The far and away the leading cause of damage in the state is no locate ticket in place. So somebody hasn't called 811, they haven't had that, those lines haven't been marked. Another one is failure to maintain clearance within the tolerance zone. So that's kind of an interesting issue in and of itself. So the tolerance zone is 18 inches plus half the nominal diameter of a pipe. And within that zone, you cannot use mechanized equipment. So things like backhoes, track hoes, that's not going to be an option. You have to use soft digging methods. So things like air knifing, hydrovac, shovels, hand tools. That's what you need to use within the tolerance zone. It's also kind of an interesting concept with the fact that there is no vertical limit to that. There's only a horizontal limit. So if you have a 4-inch pipeline, that's a 20-inch zone on either side of that line that you can't use those mechanized tools. It extends indefinitely vertically up and down above that pipeline. So while there is a best practice occasionally of daylighting a line, it doesn't mean that you have to. If a line is 10 feet down and you're really going to be digging 10 inches, you're not required to daylight that line. That's a fairly common question that we get.
Okay, so yeah, I guess that makes a lot of sense. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
I was just thinking about that. I was like, man, that's really unfortunate. Like, I just want to update like the flower bed or whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah, it's not a required, and that's obviously going to make it more likely to damage that line too if you know it's deep down there, and you're going to be excavating at a very shallow depth.
and why? I mean, there's this is I think probably the most obvious question when we're talking about all of this. Why is pipeline damage prevention important? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you can spell it out, but I mean, this is a big deal.
Yeah, it absolutely is. There is a lot of implications for a potentially damaged and hazardous line. A lot of folks don't realize that even if you just graze a line, you just nick it, that's going to damage the protective coating on that line, leading to corrosion further on down the road. And gas will migrate through the soil. It's going to escape somewhere, some way. There have been incidences where a line has been nicked, it's corroded, it's migrated into another person's property, into their house, and that's resulted in potentially explosions. It is genuinely a dangerous situation, and that's why we get out. We try to ensure that the public is aware of these Chapter 18 laws and follow best practices for any type of excavation in any situation.
And you said laws, so like there are legal consequences and implications in someone going out there and not going the right way as far as if they're going to be excavating or doing this type of work.
There absolutely is, yeah. So there are legal implications of not following Chapter 18. For example, one of those being having called 811 before you begin to excavate. There are others such as failure to maintain clearance in the tolerance zone. There are failure to report that damage to the commission, failure to call 811 after a damage occurs, if it does. All of these are legal docketable offenses. So let's say that you're going to be digging up a rose bush. You get out, you know this is coming, you call 811, say, hey, I'm going to be doing some excavation. You call that in a couple of days ahead of time. Locator comes out, locates that general area that you have outlined and hopefully white-lined. And white-lining is basically just showing the locator where you're going to be digging. If you have your front yard that you're going to be ripping all the grass out, just use spray paint, white flags, whatever you have available to you to indicate where that area is. So you've called in your 811 ticket. You've waited the required time. You begin to dig. Perhaps a line was missed by that locator. You hit it. You then need to call 811 again. Let them know, hey, I damaged the line. Once you've done that, you then have 30 days to report to the commission by filling out something called the TDRF, the Texas Damage Reporting Form. Now, basically what this is a report by the excavating party to let us at the commission know what happened, what resulted in that damage. The other side of that is the operator is going to do the same thing, the entity who owns that pipeline. Our analysts will then compare the excavator and the operator report to see if there were any violations of Chapter 18. And if there were, they'll send out a docket to either party, the operator or the excavator. Now, in that circumstance, you'll have a certain duration of time to get that paid. Hopefully it does right off the bat. And once that is paid, you're considered to be back within compliance.
And that all depends, again, with those processes. So, like, if I did the right things, if I called everything in advance and all this stuff happened, like it is a very due diligence on your part if you're going to be excavating all of that in those situations.
Absolutely, yeah. If all of these laws are followed, even if you hit a line, typically you're not going to receive a docket. There are very few circumstances where that's going to happen. Like you said,
there are risks to all of this, and you don't want to be the one who cut off the gas to your neighborhood or cause additional harm or something like that.
At the very least, it's going to be an inconvenience to someone, but the worst case scenario, it could result in property damage, loss of life. This is a very serious topic.
So in these situations, when we're talking pipeline safety and all of this, what role does the RRC play post-incident? Is there investigations, or how you said that there's some analysts and things? How does all of that work?
Absolutely. So what occurs is, in a perfect world, the excavator that damaged that line and the operator will file that TDRF, the Texas Damage Reporting Form. Our analysts will review it. They'll send out dockets if there are violations of Chapter 18. If it's, for example, non-jurisdictional, so let's say it's only 10 inches down, that's outside of our jurisdiction. We're not going to touch that. So we would send something called an NJL, a non-jurisdictional letter. Let's say, though, that those reports have some conflicting information. Well, in that circumstance, we're going to reach out to the operator and the excavator, say, hey, there's some issue that we're having, let's say, with the depth. One party claims that it's jurisdictional, one party claims that it isn't. So we'll send out a RAD, a request for additional data. Those parties will then respond with pictures, with videos, with any type of documentation that they have to our analyst, who will then review it and make a determination based on that information that was sent to them. And hopefully, we're able to make a clear and concise determination, send out if the excavator didn't call 811, violation if the excavator didn't maintain the tolerance zone, or on the other side of that, the operator. If they didn't mark those lines accurately, that would potentially be a violation of Chapter 18 for them.
From that side of it, how do you really enforce that compliance, or how do you like educate folks on how all of that works when they're putting is it when they're putting the lines, or what is sort of, how does all of this network get built out with all this information?
Well, that's a great question. So we spent the past couple of years trying to build up our outreach and our educational side of Chapter 18. So one of our compliance analysts goes out on a fairly regular basis to events across the state of Texas. These can be anything from a Damage Prevention Council meeting, which is hosted by 811. This could be things like the Texas Municipal League. This could be the Sunbelt Builder Show. It could be public and private events that we have the opportunity to get out and educate the folks who attend these events on our Chapter 18 laws. Our main goal here is to ensure compliance and ensure safety for the public, for companies, for entities that deal with these lines, whether they own them or just work around them on a regular basis. And we want to make sure at the end of the day, everybody goes home safe.
Yeah, I mean, because that really is, when you think about it, I know here in Central Texas, there's so much growth happening.
Oh, yeah.
And I know it was a conversation we had with Stephanie talking about, I mean, in some of these areas, as you're seeing like Austin expand north, there may be other pipelines that were put in there 20, 30 years ago, and all of a sudden like a subdivision appears. But there's a lot of pieces to all of this and how all of this works.
There are. It is an incredibly interconnected puzzle that we have to work with on a daily basis.
Because it is, again, what was the number? It's like 480,000 miles of pipeline, give or take.
Yeah, we were getting on up there.
When you're talking about excavator and operator, can the excavator be like me in my backyard? Just, I want to expand, I want to put in a pergola or something. That could be me. Excavator could be me. It's not just going to be like it doesn't necessarily need to be a company or anything like that, right?
No, not at all. Basically, anybody within the state of Texas who is putting tools in the ground or moving earth in any capacity could be considered an excavator. So homeowners are a group, a target population that we try and work with as much as possible. The average individual is most likely never going to be exposed to the Chapter 18 rules. They're never going to be exposed to general pipeline safety laws, doing whatever they do in their daily lives. So typically what we will try to do is education specifically for homeowners. So if a homeowner is out in their backyard, they want to build a pergola, they want to build a deck, they want to put in a new rose bush or just dig a garden, we will send out to them, if they hit a line, something called a homeowner warning letter that basically informs them of Chapter 18, the laws that we typically enforce, and some of the safe digging methods that they can use to avoid this in the future. It's something that we work with, like I said, specifically with homeowners. Now, this could be anything from also a small mom and pop company to a multi-million-dollar company that we work with. But again, homeowners with their kind of unique place within this ecosystem that we work within, we try to do primarily education rather than enforcement for them, and we consider them to be back within compliance once they have received that letter.
And following up on that, say, all right, look, I'm just going to put this thing in the ground. All right, it's not going to take that. Calling 811 takes too long. How long does it actually take? I call 811. I want to do something in my yard. How long will it take for them to come out, hook up, and mark everything?
Yeah, so you need to call that ticket in 48 hours ahead of time. Give them that duration to get out there and mark that line. Once that 48 hours has passed, you can go ahead and begin your excavation.
Simple as that. They don't have to wait that long. It's 2 days.
So if you need to get a project going that weekend, just call on Wednesday. You'll be fine.
And that's something worth noting as well, that this is 48 working hours. So over the weekend, you'll still need to wait an additional 48 hours. If you call that in on Friday, it's going to take until the next week to get that started.
Do you have any, I mean, when you're speaking of all this, do you have any like real life examples of anything? Like what are some of the things that you've seen out there with this damage? I mean, that kind of, and I see the look on your face right now for anyone out there, there's kind of I have stories to tell, but this is very important. This is serious stuff. I mean, are there some things, I don't want to hear like war stories, but it can be a significant.
It really is. It's something that impacts everybody. And I can honestly, when I was a compliance analyst back in 2018, I remember within my first 6 months, there was an incident that came through that I will never forget. This particular entity, and I'm not going to name any names or anything else.
Sure.
I don't even remember the name at this point. But I remember what happened real clearly. There was a line that had been exposed. There was an 811 ticket in place. Everything to a T had been followed. There were no violations up until the damage occurred. The excavator in question had exposed the line, used hand tools. They were unsure if the line was active or not. Rather than contacting the operator or using any other means at their disposal, went back to their truck, grabbed a drill, power drill, and just drilled into the line.
Oh.
Yeah. And of course, blew gas everywhere. Fortunately, there were no injuries. There were no ignitions or anything else. But this is one of those situations where outside of just the law, common sense can come into play of use the resources at your disposal to determine if a line is active or safe, abandoned, whatever the case may be. And then too, just on a personal note, I've experienced outages with excavation around my place where I live. So there are circumstances that this is going to impact a lot of people on a fairly daily basis. Whether you know someone or you yourself have been impacted by excavation requirements or potential accidents and damages, it's a daily occurrence. Across the state, there is always going to be some sort of excavation occurring, and this is a huge, huge topic to delve into.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like it would be, like we mentioned, Texas is growing. Texas, I mean, there's so much happening that, like, you start thinking about, like, yeah, every time you see any backhoe out there somewhere or any type of project, it's digging going on, and there's probably lines nearby with all of this. And again, I mean, just to remind folks, 811 won't just get you gas and things like that. It's going to get you all the lines too. Just you get all the information when you're dialing in, so you don't have to. It's a one-stop shop. Yeah.
It's going to be water, electric, utilities. All of that will be included, not just gas.
What sort of collaboration goes on with like local governments and stakeholders, like within communities, to inform them?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work with municipalities on a fairly regular basis to come out to events and speak at these opportunities to relate to their constituents, to their employees, to even their local homeowners, what they need to do to avoid damages within the state. One of the more recent ones that we worked with, I believe, was down in San Marcos. We went to an event there that was hosted at the Chamber of Commerce. These are opportunities that we work with any chance we get and anytime we're available to get out. It's not just about enforcement for us. It's about ensuring that people are safe, that they don't damage their property, and that they themselves are safe too.
Now, I sometimes have some curveball questions that just pop in my head as we're kind of going through all of this. Where does sort of Mother Nature play into your job and things like that when we're talking, I'm picturing a big live oak upends and there's pipe. Like, is that part of this as well?
Well, that's not going to be something we would enforce upon. Act of God, so to speak, or Mother Nature taking over and damaging a line isn't going to be something that we would hold a property owner at fault for example. Now, with something like that, it's worth noting that soil erosion does occur. If you know, let's say 15 years ago, a company came out and laid pipe in your backyard that was 2 foot down, 15 years is a fairly significant duration of time for soil erosion to potentially happen. That line now could be just a few inches under the ground, depending on where you live and what type of soil you have. So it's worth noting that even if you know where a line is at, you don't necessarily know how much that line is shifted or how deep it is at any given point in time. And that's another reason why calling 811 is important, to make sure that line is marked and you use hand tools within that tolerance zone to expose that line and know where it's at.
Okay, that's good to know. Now, I'm a member of a public. I go back home to my house. I look across the street. I see my neighbor. He wants to put in a new pool, and I see him out there digging, and I see a pipe. And I have a concern, and I'm not sure if there's any flagging or anything that's gone up or anything like that. What can I do as far as if I think that there's some damage or some unsafe excavation happening?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of tools that we have at our disposal here at the Commission. There are two that I really kind of like to highlight. One of them is the General Public Report, which is what in that particular case you would make use of, reporting that events in the case that it was damaged to the Commission. The other one is something called the NDNC, No Damage Non-Compliance Report. Now, what that does is that gives us the ability to track non-compliance even though there was no damage to a pipeline. So if you see your neighbor across the street who's going out and he's just putting his tools in the ground, no kind of safety being maintained, there's no 811 ticket in place, you can file that no damage non-compliance report, and we will then send them out educational information of, hey, just to let you know, you're out of compliance for X, Y, and Z reason. You need to regain compliance. They'll have to respond to that. And then we will have documentation that they are aware of those laws. And so if they damage a line the next time, rather than treating that as a first-time offense and offering them a training class, we will enforce full penalties right out of the gate. It's a tool that we have at our disposal that has come in handy on multiple occasions.
And when we're talking like tracking all of this stuff, how do you, I mean, I'm sure there are many systems in place, but could you go into a little bit of as far as like what technologies do you have out there to really kind of keep tabs on all the different stuff across these hundreds of thousands of miles of pipelines?
Yeah, of course. So one of the things that folks can use to kind of take a look at and see, and this is under no circumstances a replacement for calling 811 in any way at all. But we do have something called the Public GIS Viewer available to anyone here at the Commission and anyone in the public in general, to go in and take a look at where these pipelines are located across the state. If you've got a question about your property to see if there's a pipeline running across it, you can get on that GIS viewer and see where it's at, or see generally where it's at, and just kind of get a little bit more information on that pipeline or what's in your area as anybody might have curiosity or questions about when they're beginning any type of project. So that's one of the tools that the public has at their disposal to really take a little bit better look at those pipelines.
So good way to get a ballpark sense, but not, hey, let's put shovel to ground type.
No, this is by no means a way to plan an excavation and know where that line is at. This is just to kind of give you a general ideal. Even if a property looks like there are no lines in that area, please do call 811. It is still a requirement.
There is a lot of this even in, because I'm thinking, I live out in the suburbs. There's no way that there's a natural gas pipeline running through our neighborhood. There is.
There very likely is, yes. Yeah, just because there's a new development doesn't mean there wasn't a pipeline put in there 10, 15 years ago to supply a larger area somewhere on down the road.
You mentioned you were a compliance analyst when you started. I guess it's a two-part question. The first is, what's the training that some of your outreach people or people that deal with these damages, what's the training like? And then the second part is, we have district offices all across the state. Are we having compliance analysts or damage prevention people at all those district offices as well?
Yeah, so our compliance analysts are based here in Austin. We travel across the state. If our department was a little bit bigger, it'd be great to have local folks who could get out at a little bit more of a rapid pace and not have to travel as far. But we are based here at the Austin headquarters. As far as the training class that you mentioned, that is kind of a unique opportunity for first-time offenders. So think of it as a similar concept to defensive driving. If you are a first-time offender for, let's say, having not called 811, having not maintained the tolerance zone, well, our analysts will get a hold of that incident, file a docket, see all of the history for that entity that damaged the pipeline, and then reach out to them saying, hey, there's a training class available to you. It's entirely up to that entity if they wish to take the class or not. They can pay the docket out of the gate. That's fine. But if they do, it's a $400 cost that goes to the party that is doing that training. It doesn't come back to us. Once that training is over, they'll give us the certificate. We'll log that, and we will send them, we'll basically withdraw that docket so they don't have to pay, let's say, a $3,500 docket. Saves quite a bit of money. And it also, more importantly, informs them of these Chapter 18 laws. It gives them an opportunity to make themselves and their company, or just their family, a little bit more safe at the end of the day.
Miles, thank you so much. This one, like some of the episodes we have are they can be sort of industry specific and things, but this is really something that does apply to almost all Texans. Like if you're out there and you're thinking about a project or you see construction, or also, I mean, this is something that really impacts all of us on a day-to-day basis. So this is some really important information that I appreciate you taking time to talk to us about.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure to be here. Thanks, y'all.
So Nick, we've got some more episodes lined up. Again, we have bumped up our frequency. We've mentioned it a few times now. Every other week, we're going to be coming back to talk all sorts of topics. I know we've got some great things lined up in the future. Where can folks find us?
Yeah, to keep learning more about the podcast, the best thing you can do, subscribe wherever you're listening right now. Download, subscribe, and share as well, so we can get the word out. Especially for I half jokingly say share to all your family and everything. But if we can get the word out to help people, especially you're talking about topics like today, that's great. We have a lot of good information for our listeners. You listen on, first of all, obviously the podcast apps, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the two big ones. We're on Audible, YouTube. We have several other ones. iHeartRadio, we're out there too. So we make it easy. All you got to do is click subscribe so you get that notification on your phone that there's a new episode and you can listen to it. If you're going to work, coming home from work, or going out on holiday somewhere, you can listen to the podcast. You can also find the Railroad Commission on X, on social media at TXRRC, LinkedIn and Facebook. We're at Railroad Commission of Texas, at Railroad Commission of Texas on Instagram as well. So we put out a lot of information there, as well as podcast material and clips and reminders of when the next episode is coming out. And I actually remembered it this time, Bryce. Our website, rrc.texas.gov. If you do want to freshen up on some of the Chapter 18 rules and things, there's a lot of damage prevention information on our website.
As well as that's where you would access through our GIS and all those other things as well. And again, you can also sign up for newsletters and all sorts of other resources, rule changes, all of that on our website. So lots of great resources out there. But I think that wraps us up for this week. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will talk to you all soon.